National Assembly tightens grip on public finances amid 2027 election funding debate. Tensions over public finance has deepened as lawmakers scrutinized INEC's 873.78 billion naira proposal for 2027 general election, recommending sanctions against non-compliant agencies while questioning delays in Treasury fund releases by the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation. The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Joash Amukpiton, who presented the proposal before a joint committee of the Senate and House of Representatives on electoral matters, clarified that the 873.78 billion naira required for the 2027 polls is separate from the Commission's 2026 budget proposal. For 2026, INEC plans to spend 171 billion naira on its operations, including the conduct of by-elections and off-cycle elections. Moving on, the lingering crisis over leadership and governance at the local government level in Osun State is taking its toll on workers and pensioners. Many of the communities are also sinking deeper into poverty and neglect. Since March 2025, more than 130 billion naira statutory allocations due to the 30 local government areas in the state have been held back, trapped in bank vaults due to political power play. Even worse, the crisis is increasingly deepening political tension and degenerating into violence and loss of lives. Away from Osun, former Kaduna State Governor Malam Nasir Rufai is facing backlash over his claim that the phone of the National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu was bugged. Aides of the president and politicians, including former Kano State Governor Abdullahi Ganduje, as well as legal practitioners and security experts, are calling for El Rufai's probe over the claim, arguing that his confession on national television was sufficient grounds for prosecution. But the former governor has gone further to ask the National Security Advisor, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, to clarify reports that the NSA's office imported thallium sulfate, a very dangerous toxin. In the letter titled Request for Clarification on the Procurement of Thallium Sulfate, El Rufai raised some questions which he asked Ribadu to respond to. Joining us on Political Brief to discuss these stories is Arise Director of News and Politics Editor Somna Sambo. Good morning, Somna. A very busy weekend of news in Nigeria, and some of them presented this morning. You're most welcome today.
Somna, if you don't mind, let's start.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Dr. Abatsi.
Morning.
Of course, Rufai.
Morning, Sambo. Nasir.
If you don't mind, let's start with the new Nasir Rufai story versus Nuhu Ribadu. Some people are commenting that, well, the attempt to arrest him at the airport on his return to the country did not follow due process. I think that's easy to understand. But the other issue is that when he now went on prime time with Charles Aniagolu, he said, you know, he almost confessed, or he confessed publicly, that, you know, some people had bugged the NSC's phone and that he had access to the information, and he made certain allegations. And then confession, of course, is almost like an admission of guilt. To bug another person's phone and be reporting publicly, isn't that in itself an offense? So some people have said, nobody should now come and say he's been harassed, having used his own mouth to say he's involved in the bugging of phones. The other issue is the thallium sulfate, a toxin, which he had asked for clarification from the NSA. The letter is now in circulation. He himself posted it on Instagram. It's dated 16th January. Now, what do you think should follow now? So that the security situation in Nigeria is not reduced to a personal conflict between a former governor and an incumbent national security advisor. On Osun, we've argued ad nauseam on this platform that, look, it's a very funny situation that under the watch of President Tinubu, who supported the rights of states under federal the principle of federalism is the one under whose watch now Osun State is being treated badly, and local governments have been seized, and people are suffering, and all kinds of allegations about how local government administration in Osun State has been politicized. Then, of course, INEC is asking for 873 billion, not minding the fact that they have an outstanding 171 billion for all cycle elections. A total over 1 trillion. Where is that money going to come from? When even the Ministry of Health, that was assigned 286 billion in the 2026 budget, only got, or 2025 budget, only got 36 million naira, 36 million, as opposed to over 280 billion. So all those issues. Will I not get the money? Is that not a booby trap already? Where is the money even going to come from? At the time they are saying they will sell assets to raise money and then, do some other creative financial management.
All right. Thank you so much for raising some of these issues. Let's start from the ongoing battle between two friends, one in government and one out of government. Nasir Rufai and his very good friend, the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu. I want you to look at it from the perspective of what has happened if you roll back the last 10 years between these people, because Nigerians should be very careful not to allow these people to drive the narrative. These are just, people who are playing politics with governance. I mean, remember when the APC came into government in 2015, Nasir Rufai was the arrowhead of the think tank for the Buhari presidency. And of course, they helped to put in place certain things. And of course, you would have seen that, some appointments that were made, which were supposed to have gone towards Bola Tinubu then as APC national leader, as they like to call him, or Nuhu Ribadu, most of those appointments were kicked aside because of, the so-called cabal that were under the Buhari presidency with Nasir Rufai, people like Mamandara and a whole lot of them, holding sway, with Issa Funtua and so many of those people. So some of the things that you're seeing are part of those grievances, even from the Tinubu presidency himself. They hit back at Tinubu, denying some of his appointees, pushing him aside, and he was quiet for a whole lot of time. And he licked his wounds quietly until he had the time to actually hit back. And of course, he got back to power. The same thing with Nuhu Ribadu. And so you would have seen that all these things, Nigerians should look at it without emotion and face the issues rationally. Now, the things that Nasir Rufai revealed actually it's quite disturbing. And if I were President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I would start doubting the integrity of Nuhu Ribadu based on the allegation immediately. But then, as an NSA, for his phone to be bugged, the idea by Nasir Rufai is to push the narrative that Ribadu is ineffective. But is Ribadu really ineffective in power? President Tinubu knows best, because for him to have appointed Ribadu NSA, it means he has done his due diligence and all of that. So I would want us to look at it from that perspective, that Rufai is trying to drive a narrative which is very dangerous to the country beyond the politics that they are trying to play. Because that means if our National Security Advisor's phone is being tapped, a whole lot of sensitive discussions can go out and it could be used against the state, not just against the president or even Nuhu Ribadu himself. So it's a very dangerous narrative. But you see that Nasir Rufai was careful and was being skillful with his words, trying to say that that someone else tapped the phone and informed him, not that himself actually tapped the phone. So I would say that the National Assembly needs to come in right now. I know that the APC-led National Assembly is one that, tilts towards the party and all of that right now, instead of the Nigerian people. But in the saner society, by now, the National Assembly's Committee on National Intelligence should start thinking of putting together a bipartisan committee that will call all these people and listen to them. Because the idea of the National Security Advisor or the Office of the National Security Advisor saying that Ribadu should submit all his evidence to the DSS, I don't think that may provide a fair hearing. President Tinubu should encourage the National Assembly to set up a bipartisan National Intelligence Committee meeting, whether it's ad hoc, different from the National Intelligence Committee meetings that we have in both chambers now, and sit down and look at this, because these allegations, for example, of the poisonous substance that he is actually bringing to the fore, could actually be likened to what happened to Alexander Litvinenko in the UK, when the Russians kept targeting the oppositions outside the country. And of course, many of them will just go to restaurants to eat, and before you know it, pick up some of these substances, and before you know it, they are dead after some time, or so on. So the opposition leaders, if that's what Nasir El-Rufai is saying, that they are in danger, has also sent a very difficult and dangerous signal that the governing party maybe is afraid of what's going to happen in the next election. And so I would think that if this National Intelligence Committee, an ad hoc one or a different one is set up, it could help to calm frayed nerves. And then, of course, because you have members of other political parties, it could help to shield APC away from this dangerous, very, very dangerous narratives that Nasir El-Rufai is trying to bring. Well, does Nasir El-Rufai have the sympathy of many Nigerians? I can tell you that many Nigerians don't have sympathy for him, because he's part of those who actually brought some of these issues. When they are in power, they were enjoying, the appurtenances of power, hitting hard at opposition in his home state. And you would have seen someone like Senator Shehu Sani providing very clear and raw evidences. So please, Nigerians should not treat these issues from an emotional perspective. Everybody is a suspect. From President Tinubu to the National Security Advisor to Nasir El-Rufai that's raising the allegation, and the so-called opposition leaders who claim to have this information, everybody should subject him or herself, because this is a threat against the Nigerian people. And so, let's be careful too. Let's look at this man called Nasir El-Rufai and be careful to ask him not to play politics that could destroy Nigeria. Because Nigeria is bigger than himself. Nigeria is bigger than the African Democratic Congress or the group of opposition leaders, including the governing governing All Progressives Congress. This nation must be taken with, a whole lot of trust by the political elite. This is not good. We have not heard this kind of narratives before. And so please, the dangerous precedent that Nasir El-Rufai is setting should be contained. And if these allegations are found to be false, I think the law should actually take its course, irrespective of the alleged victimization that he's claiming. Now, let's look at some of the issues that have been raised too. The issues of funds in the National Assembly. Actually, these are very dangerous times that we are in. Lawmakers are asking this very simple question, but which the Tinubu presidency hasn't really answered. Where is the money? Because MDAs are complaining that some of them got 5%. In fact, some even got 1% of funding for capital budget. And yet, we heard the president saying that we have surpassed our target. The president said we surpassed our target of 40.8 trillion naira thereabout, only for the Minister of Finance to come and tell us, what they're doing, that we had only realized about 10 trillion. Now the customs, the FIRS, that keep telling us that we've already gone above. Where is the money? Because now, if this money is not available to fund INEC on time, and I can tell you that we've already started missing those deadlines, there'll be a problem. 873 billion. The National Assembly should actually question that budget very well, because these issues actually have to do with over-expenditure. In the last election, we spent about 3,800 naira per one voter in Nigeria. That's about 93 million voters. So if you now look at the budget that INEC has presented, because that budget then was about 300 and something billion naira, to which they got about 313 billion released to them. Now, if you now put this together, you will see that that amount has quadrupled. And so the cost of election is becoming too much. And then you discover that it is very clear that the National Assembly is not doing its job. Because if both houses of the National Assembly are doing their job, they will scrutinize the INEC budget. Look at the IRF that we're talking about, spending 200 billion. Are we not supposed to be updating the softwares and all of that? How come we are spending so much for a technology that we used in 2023? So they should take a look at this INEC budget very, very clearly, and then see some other additions. Like the NYC, they are saying that their ad hoc staff that should be brought in place should have an increase in the amount, I think about 120,000 per ad hoc staff that's used. That's each core member. The National Assembly should scrutinize these documents very well, and then look at the issues that we have with our budgeting system. For example, why is INEC on the envelope system rather than the performance-based system? Shouldn't INEC have all its money? Because if you look at Section 3, subsection 3 of the Electoral Act, what the Electoral Act actually says that INEC should be given all its monies at once. But it looks like they are being given the envelope system, where they're asking about 170-something billion for their own internal operations, and the Ministry of Finance is saying that they are going to give them 140 billion. With the crucial role INEC plays, shouldn't the National Assembly be questioning why the executive is reducing the budget of INEC? Because that is an executive interference. And then on the last note, the issues of funding of Osun and all of that, honestly, it's a very sad development that President Tinubu's government will still be going through this. But I think we have information that the presidency is trying to see how they wade into it. And I'm hopeful that the president will not treat this as an opposition state, but he will treat it as the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, where a component part of the federation, Osun State, is being denied its funds that are supposed to help to run and provide services for that state. And Mr. President knows that this particular state is very dear and critical to him, considering his lineage and all of that. And so there is no reason why Governor Ademola Adeleke should be suffering this, considering that President Tinubu himself has suffered that in the past. The APC-led federal government should be very careful not to repeat the mistakes that was done by the PDP. And I can tell you that the APC has done very well for itself as a political party. For example, today in Kano, we'll be having Governor Abba Yusuf joining it, making about 30 to 31 states that are with the APC. We have never had any political party in the Fourth Republic that has been so fortunate to have so many governors, so many states in its kitty. So why is it interested in making Osun State, feel like if it doesn't belong to the governing party, that some funds won't be given to it? And I know that Governor Ademola Adeleke made attempts to even join the APC to assuage them, but some forces in Osun APC refused to allow him to join. What more do you want him to do? Now, he has gone to, a court party and all of that. President Tinubu should look at this carefully, set up a committee that will be able to advise him properly, and not repeat the mistakes that former President Olusegun Obasanjo did. Because a whole lot of Nigerians have sympathy for Osun State, because this should not be happening. It's the people of the state that are suffering, and the funds are domiciled in a particular commercial bank, waiting for nothing. And so I would advise that the APC-led federal government, having enjoyed several things that they enjoy, President Tinubu is also going to be in Adamawa today, to which we hear that Adamawa is going to go to the APC pretty soon. What more can the APC want again? We can't have all the governors. So the few ones that are left, the opposition governors, allow them to breathe, allow the people to breathe, and enjoy all that you are enjoying at the moment. And I can tell you, it can never be better for any political party like the APC. At the moment, they've done very well, but please allow Governor Ademola Adeleke to breathe, allow the people in Osun State local governments to breathe, allow governance to take stage. If you have said there's local government autonomy, why are you not making it difficult for local governments in Osun State to function?
Indeed. Well, thank you so much, Somna. Like you said, let governance and democracy breathe. Thank you for your time with us this morning. We'll see you again next week, Monday, if not before.